anything like that. Makes dead weight pretty big.
Okay. So I do know that our players are ready down in the feature match area. We're going to see another enchantment, not dead weight. We might see a demonic pact. Let's hope so. We're sending it down to the floor for round 13 here at Grand Prix Portland. Welcome to round 13 coverage of Grand Prix Portland. I'm Brian David Marshall, and I am joined by two-time Pro Tour Top 8 competitor Reed Duke, and we are watching JC Tao with his Obzon control deck versus Chris Botello with Cat Pact. He's doing something you've been wanting to do in Standard every time a new set comes out, Reed Duke.
Yeah, every time I try it, I've never gotten it to the level of success that Chris Botello is showing us this weekend.
And by the way, that 11-1, that is with only one bye.
Wow,
so
very
he has
impressive.
won 10 actual matches of Magic with this deck that relies on Harmless offering to give a Demonic Pact to your opponent.
Yeah, so at 11-1, these matches are starting to have really big top 8 implications.
So there we see a Sylvan Advocate from JC Tao gets taken out by an Oath of Chandra from Chris Botello, a card that you think can really shine here in a room full of decks that have access to green-white mana if you're playing a Demonic Pact.
Yep, so Oath of Chandra is an enchantment that front-loads its effect, so you really don't mind losing it to Dramoka's Command, and it gives you a buffer to protect your Demonic Pact, which, of course, is the linchpin card of Chris Botello's deck.
Double buffer here for Chris Botello. Now he goes Oath of Jace into a second Sylvan Advocate from JC Tao.
And Botello does have 2 copies of Liliana the Last Hope in his deck, so he can trigger the secondary abilities on these Oaths. Oath of Chandra, 2 damage to the opponent, and Oath of Jace, scry 1 during your upkeep.
So we got a lot of, this is the most Oaths I've seen in play at one time since they've been printed. Here's Oath of Nissa, and it finds a third copy now, but a second maybe for the board here of Sylvan Advocate.
Yeah, so both these players just, developing their mana, and Transgress the Mind is going to be one of the biggest cards in this matchup for JC Tao against Chris Botello. Chris is, you could really think of it as a combo deck that he's playing here. He needs to assemble Demonic Pact, and he needs to have a way to either reset his Demonic Pact like a Disperse, or the card you see in his hand here, Harmless Offering, give it to JC Tao.
It was interesting. I watched Chris Botello play last round against Travis Wu. And there was actually an instant where Travis had Anguish Unmaking in his hand, and he thought he would have an opportunity on his turn, once the Harmless Offering had been made, to remove the enchantment and not die, but he did not realize that it put a trigger on the stack at the beginning of his upkeep that you have to deal with even if that card's no longer there.
Yep, we used to see that a lot with players that won with a Bitter Blossom in play. You can champion it with Mistbind Click, you can bounce it with Cryptic Command, but you are dead if that trigger goes on the stack, if you start your turn with Bitter Blossom in play. Same thing true with Demonic Pact.
So one Sylvan Advocate left standing after a while. Now we see a 6th land for Chris Botello, and he is going to cast Dark Petition with Spell Mastery. So he's going to put 3 black in his mana pool.
He actually may not have Spell Mastery there. I think one of the cards in his graveyard is a land that he discarded for Oath of Jace.
Okay. Sorry.
But he's still setting up nicely for next turn.
So and he's shown a lot of patience with this deck.
Mm-hmm. So I can tell you from my own experience, the number one problem that I've faced with my Demonic Pact brews is just that your deck doesn't do enough sometimes if you can't get Demonic Pact into play.
Players in standard number 7, please go to the blue meeting.
It looks like he did have Spell Mastery because he is putting it into play here. So
yeah, I'd like to see them double check that or maybe fan out the graveyard, but we'll take their word for it for now. But yeah, Dark Petition helps with that problem. In the perfect world, you'd love to play Demonic Pact on turn 4 every game, but in this case, JC thwarted the first Demonic Pact, but Dark Petition finds a second one.
And here you see him drawing 3 cards for the turn. He's going to use the draw 2 cards mode.
Your savings for construction are
Interesting talking to Patello about the deck. We saw him 2 rounds ago make a harmless offering of the Demonic Pact with 2 modes to go on. It was you lose the game in one other mode. And he said a lot of times against an Emrakul player, you want to give them 2 modes, and you want to set the second to last mode to be target opponent discards 2 cards, because sometimes you'll have answers to Demonic Pact in your hand, and you want them to have to force you to discard them before they take your turn with Emrakul.
Boy, that is awesome. This is a guy that really knows all the tricks.
We know he's holding a harmless offering. So he dealt some damage to that with Demonic Pact and then finished it off with another Oath of Chandra.
Yep, that's a move we saw him do a couple matches ago, and that's huge. I mean, 4 damage doesn't kill every creature in Standard. Well, he's assembled his combo here.
Yeah, here you go. And see, and now he says, you have to make me discard 2 cards. I'll discard these. They're not necessarily relevant, but that's what he does.
Yep, the
Wow.
not so harmless offering of Demonic Pact.
And JC Tao, can he assemble 6 points of damage here?
Yeah, so he can either try to win the game this turn, or we know that he has, I think, at least 1 copy of Anguished Unmaking in his deck. Oh, yeah, this looks like a tough way to do it.
JC Tao spins Liliana, puts 2 cards into his graveyard. Can get a Nissa back. Get a Sylvan Advocate back. None of those things are going to help him. And Chris Patello takes game 1.
Wow, incredible.
And that's the face we've seen all of Chris Patello's opponents have. They're just like, wow, I just lost a Demonic Pact. What? I wasn't expecting that. And there's Chris Patello. He's getting used to it. He's like, oh yeah, this deck is firing. He said he played, and some people have said that this is an impossible number. He said he's played more than 300 games with this deck on Magic Online.
Nice. Good for him. That's the way to do it with a brew like this, where you need to get every card, just perfect. Every card needs to do exactly the job that it's there for.
Yeah. He's from Vancouver, not BC, Washington, parentheses, not DC, he says. Meanwhile, we're going to check in on, well, that looks like they're scooping things up here between Jerry Thompson and David Ochoa.
Yeah, and we tuned in just 1 second too late to see who won, but based on the life totals, it seems like maybe it was Jerry's.
Yeah, that looks like Jerry took game 1 here.
Yep.
As the players go for their sideboards. And now, so let's look at Chris Patel and see what he might be bringing in. I saw him bring in Dragonlord Silumgar against Travis Wu last round, and that was a card that actually factored pretty heavily against a Nissa. Against a Liliana that was threatening to ultimate, and Travis knew it was in Chris's hand, and he just couldn't let himself get his Liliana up to 7.
Absolutely. If you know your opponent has Planeswalkers, and we all know JC Tao has Planeswalkers, Dragonlord Silumgar is probably the best card in the format to combat that. As you mentioned, the threat of taking a Planeswalker when it's ready to ultimate is just huge. That's a game-changing, game-swinging effect. But also just anytime your opponent taps out for a main phase big threat and you're able to counter it with Dragonlord Silumgar, that's a game that you can win.
Yeah, it was really frustrating. You could tell it was frustrating for Travis to be playing that game because he basically spent 5 turns doing nothing with his Liliana.
Wow.
It just sat there for turns, and he's just like, well, I can't put it to 7. He's playing a very Planeswalker heavy deck, doesn't have a lot of creatures to return, so he didn't want to tick it down, and so it just sat there. It was crazy.
So meanwhile, Chris Patello doesn't even have to cast the spell in his hand for it to have a huge impact. He can spend his mana on other things, and just having the Dragonlord Silumgar ready completely messes with the opponent's game plan.
So is it fair to say, we obviously, talk about the Harmless Offering and the Demonic Pact. Is it fair to say that it's a Dark Petition deck?
Yeah, I think so. Part of it is, well, we mentioned the moving pieces of the Demonic Pact deck. You need to find your Demonic Pact, and you need to find an answer to it. Problem is you can't just jam 4 each of Harmless Offering, Disperse, Silumgar's Command into your deck, because then your deck's not going to function when you don't draw Demonic Pact in your opening hand.
Right.
Dark Petition just serves as extra copies of Harmless Offering, if nothing else.
Meanwhile, we're watching 2 11-1 players here, Paul Rietzel and Oliver Tomaszko. Bant company for Paul Rietzel, who's 11-1, and Oliver Tomaszko, Teamer Emerge.
Looks like Paul won a quick game 1, which is something that Bant can do.
Yeah. Oliver's a pretty young player. He top 16 Grand Prix Philadelphia, getting beaten by William Jensen in the last round of the Swiss to miss top 8. Won an SCG Open, and he's a Yankees fan, which is very upsetting to Paul Rietzel, who is a huge Boston sports fan.
Okay.
You don't even have to name a team. You just say Boston sports. He loves all his New England teams.
Well, that's good. A good rivalry here then.
All right, here we see Nissa Vastward Seer from Paul Rietzel.
So this is a matchup we've seen. Well, actually, we haven't seen Oliver's take on Teamer Emerge on camera very much this weekend, but the same dynamic that we've seen a lot, which is that Kozilek's return, needing to sweep the board against the Bant Company deck, is the linchpin of this matchup.
Yeah. Paul Rietzel, of course, 4 Pro Tour top 8s, a Pro Tour Hall of Famer, Pro Tour champion. And we'll check in with these guys. I have a feeling that this could drag on quite a while. Let's go back and watch JC Tao versus Chris Botello here as they get underway in Game 2 with a Sylvan Advocate for JC Tao on the play. So are there any tools available to JC in his sideboard?
Yeah, the most important element of this matchup, especially after sideboard, is going to be JC Tao's discard spells. Again, we mentioned it can either take away the Demonic Pact before it comes down, which is going to take a lot of the wind out of Chris Botello's sails, or if Demonic Pact gets into play, then JC can switch his game plan and try to take away the answer and cause Chris Botello to die to his own Demonic Pact. Either one of those options is great, and discard spells are just great against this archetype in general.
Here we see Oath of Nissa from JC Tao. He reveals a Den Protector, so if he does find one of those discard spells, he can potentially use it a couple times. Gets in with Sylvan Advocate. And there is Transgress the Mind, and it sees a pretty good hand here if it's left unattacked for Chris Botello. He's got the Harmless Offering, he's got the Demonic Pact, he's got a Dark Petition, he's got a Radiant Flame.
Yeah, so this is just perfect. Healthy amount of lands, all colors of mana, Demonic Pact, Answer to Pact, removal spell, and Dark Petition is a redundant copy of any of these cards.
So JC Tao starts working on the hand by taking the Pact out, which is the closest to impacting this game.
Mm-hmm.
Could cast Radiant Flames there, chooses not to.
Yeah, an interesting choice. I'm not sure we can expect JC to commit another creature to the board after seeing the Radiant Flames. Plus, having Radiant Flames would just get sorcery into the graveyard for spell mastery later on.
And so he does it a turn later. Here's the Den Protector, and that's going to either be able to get back the Sylvan Advocate or the Transgress the Mind.
Chris Botello has drawn 2 more copies of Dark Petition in the meantime.
Wow. So is he baiting JC into Den Protectoring for Transgress to transgress whatever he is fetching up here?
Yeah, he wants to just set up his hand to be as resilient as possible against the Transgress the Mind. I think he can expect JC to make that play, especially given, the way Game 1 played out. JC wants to be proactive and make sure Chris can't assemble those cards. So I think we actually saw him get something as unassuming as an Anticipate, he doesn't want to leave his best cards vulnerable to Transgress the Mind.
And so Den Protector does turn up, does get the Transgress the Mind, and there we see Anticipate, Dark Petition, Harmless Offering, and a land. And this is really a tough spot for JC Tao.
Yeah, I expect he'll take one of the Dark Petitions, but he's going to be facing a Demonic Pact next turn unless he has another discard spell.
And if he has another discard spell, he can also take the Harmless Offering and hope to let Chris Botello hoist himself from his own petard, as they say.
Oh, he does take Harmless Offering.
Wow.
So remember, we have deck lists in front of us. We know that Chris Botello has 2 Harmless Offerings in the main deck with a 3rd in the sideboard. However, JC could be thinking, okay, maybe he's playing 4 Dark Petitions and just 1 Harmless Offering as a tutor target. He really doesn't know, and maybe that's what he's going for here by taking Harmless Offering. Chris actually just drew Demonic Pact off the top. So that's great here. That even gives him the option to Dark Petition for a different card if he would like and use the mana on the Demonic Pact.
Yeah, he's going to play the Pact, and I think what I've seen him do, when I've been watching him, is he really likes to use that petition to go get the Harmless Offering. Would really like to keep the Harmless Offering out of his hand until the last possible minute.
Right, because it's safer in his library than in his hand.
Yeah, and he has enough ways to search and dig and draw cards on his turn.
Yeah, I like this sequence, and this even gives him the option to cast Demonic Pact and Anticipate this turn, give himself a little more information about what he might need to go for, and then use the Dark Petition when it's even more powerful later in the game.
He is at 13, and Sylvan Advocate is full-sized here.
Yeah, so JC's representing an attack for 11 here.
Wow.
Please report to the red side of the stage.
And the War Leader's Helix ability of Demonic Pact is going to buy him a little bit of breathing room, but that's a lot of power and toughness on JC's side of the board.
There's a Norwood Dryad. So Anticipate from Chris Botello.
He's just looking at 3 lands with Anticipate. So I suspect what he might have to do here is deal 4 to the Sylvan Advocate and then Dark Petition for something like a Radiant Flames to wipe up the rest.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But then, of course, he's going to have no answer to his own pact. Oh, there's a Disperse.
This deck loves him.
Yeah.
This deck clearly loves him.
But you know what? I think anyone sitting at 11-1 in a Grand Prix, their deck has loved them over the course of the weekend. That's my experience with these long Magic tournaments.
Now, is the problem he's facing here, how does he get to the enough colors of mana for his Radiant Flames?
Yeah, so he has 6 lands in play, which means he can at least Radiant Flames for 2. That is if he has 1 in his library. In a matchup like this, it's certainly possible that he might have only left 1 in his deck, and it got cast earlier.
Could also be a Languish.
Yeah, Languish would do.
You can tell he enjoys living on the razor's edge here.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, yeah, this is what I like.
Well, in a few turns, I'm going to be dying in multiple different ways at the same time, and let me carefully manage them all.
And there it is, Languish. And again, the Sylvan Advocate had taken 4 from the Demonic Pact.
Yep. And this also puts Chris up to 6, which means not in danger of dying to the 2 creature lands.
But he is not out of the woods yet. Oh, and there's Sorin Grim Nemesis.
Sorin could actually win the game here if JC flips another Sorin. Nope,
But
just the Plains.
Plains plays it. And now, if things go according to how things seem to go for Chris Botello, he will just draw a Dragonlord Silumgar.
So, I'm not sure what mode he used on.
He used draw 2, sort of vaguely out of sequence there.
Yeah, bizarre. I'm sure he announced the draw 2 and then just drew 3 cards in a weird combination. We did see him mark on the pad though, or on his slip of paper.
So disperses Soren. Passes the turn back to JC. He does have some counter magic in his deck.
Yeah, so that makes me think that he probably drew an alternative answer to the Demonic Pact. He did see 3 new cards. If he had had 2 answers, he could have made the cool play of dispersing Soren and then making JC discard 2 cards.
So he negates Soren on the way back down.
Yep.
All right, this is it.
So he needs something.
Dark Petition for Harmless Offering, Demonic Pact to you, and Chris Botello is 12-1, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow, very impressive.
12-1, 1 bye, 12-1 with Cat Pack.
Well on his way to a top 8. Good for him.
That is absolutely crazy. Speaking of crazy, decipher this board state for me, Reed.
Okay, so we have Paul Rietzel playing Bant Company with a bunch of creatures and a Gideon emblem. Gideon must be a special card that Paul has put in his sideboard for this tournament. And on the other side of the table, we have Oliver Tomajko playing Temur Emerge with his own collection of creatures. Looks like an Ishkana Graph Widow made some spiders. A couple have been lost in the fray. And
there's an Elder Deep Fiend, Pilgrim's Eye, and a Primal Druid.
Yep. And a big question mark is Oliver's graveyard. Looks like he's got a big stack of cards on the right there. Can't really tell if that's his graveyard or his exile. Maybe he's just helped us out by pulling out 1 copy of each of the different types so we could know
yeah, I've seen players sort of tier their graveyard
how much
that way.
Emrakul will cost.
There's Selfless Spirit, and that's a great answer to any
Kozilek's
returns that might happen. But both players sitting relatively unharmed here.
Wow, and we see Emrakul in Oliver's hand. This could be an explosive sequence of turns.
Yep, and we are going to see the Promised End hit play. Yep, that is his little sort of scorecard for how much mana he has in his pool for Emrakul. And casts Emrakul the Promised End. Paul Rietzel decides to sacrifice his Selfless Spirit himself.
Yeah, he knows that Oliver will just bin the Selfless Spirit anyway, so why even give him the option?
And now comes the time in the game where you must misplay your opponent's hand.
Mm-hmm. So the good news for Oliver is he has a lot of creatures in play and can make some really bad attacks for Paul. In particular, when you have this many creatures, you can double block and have the opponent not kill what they want to kill. Slightly complicated by the Gideon emblem here. So those Sylvan Advocates are 5/6s instead of just 4/5s. But he can still do something like, what he's doing there, double blocking one with an Elder Deep Fiend and a Pilgrim's Eye, assign all the damage to the Elder Deep Fiend, so you get to kill a free Sylvan Advocate while you lose nothing.
So he's animating a Lumbering Falls.
That's a 7/7. Sorry, an 8/8 even from the Gideon emblem. And I wonder what, if anything, he'll decide to do with Nissa Vastwood Seer, Sage Animus.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So Emrakul's eating the Lumbering Falls. Elder Deep Fiend and a Pilgrim's Eye are eating a Sylvan Advocate. Everyone else is ganging up on a Tireless Tracker. He's putting his Primal Druid in front on the Tireless Tracker, so he gets an activation. He gets to search for a land.
Yep. The one creature that he really doesn't mind dying on his side of the board.
That's a great exchange for Oliver Tomajko here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough for Paul to come back in this game, especially given that Oliver still has 3 cards in hand and 18 life.
And now still has not decided if he's going to do anything. It looks like he's just going to pass on the opportunity to use Nissa Sage Animist.
Which makes sense. He can't get it off the table, so why even give
Right.
Paul the extra activation of his Planeswalker?
Yep. And here we go. Paul Rietzel now gets to take an additional turn after the turn Oliver Tomashko took for him. So a nice little fix to the old Mindslaver problem.
Yeah, so he would really love to draw Collected Company here just to rebuild his destroyed board. He might have found
He
it.
did.
He found it. Wow.
He did. Oh my gosh, he drew Collected Company. And he said, if you're sitting at 11-1, your deck probably has liked you a lot over the course of the weekend.
Yep, for sure. But there are always moments where it can stop liking you, and we'll see if Paul actually hits on his company.
He does have a Nissa
That might be all, though.
and possibly a Spell Queller. Oh no, that was the gold card was actually Tameo.
Yeah, so a little bit of a disappointing company for Paul.
Gets to shuffle it back in. No more forests in his deck.
And a bit awkward now that if he wants to play a land, he'll be forced to transform and Legend Rule the
Yeah, so-
Nissus.
And I think that's what he's going to do because you see that he ticks down, makes a legendary spirit token. Now he's going to very precise.
Yep.
He could have easily just put one in the yard and done the other one, but he's very deliberate about it. Gets another land off of Nissa Sage Animist's activation. And braces for impact here from Emrakul.
Yep. And Oliver still with a really nice hand. He even found Gather the Pack to maybe look for a second copy of Emrakul or more Elder Deep Fiends.
Well, it looks like he may have found that Deep Fiend as he puts Pilgrim's Eye in his graveyard. Oh, it's a Wretched Griff.
Modern 13.
And in comes Emrakul.
Blue gathering point now. Modern 13.
And it looks like he decided to attack Paul instead of attacking the Nissa because this
Yeah.
allows him to represent lethal next turn.
Plays another Ishkanah Graph Widow.
Yep.
It
So
is
that's going to
legendary.
Legend Rule the first one.
Yeah, you see Paul stopping him. He's like, hey, Judge, that's a legendary spider.
Mm-hmm. So good catch by Paul.
The end result of this should be spider goes to the graveyard.
Yep. Oliver probably couldn't care less.
Now Paul has one more draw step to find an answer here. Finds a Duskwatch Recruiter. Has another draw. There's Reflector Mage.
Okay, so that can at least put Emrakul back in Oliver's hand and give
Gives him
Paul an
another-
extra turn, but
Yeah.
what kind of turn is it going to be? It's going to be tough for him to assemble 18 points of damage in the face of all these spiders and an Emrakul that's likely coming down again next turn. Not next turn, but the following turn.
Yep. Here comes Duskwatch Recruiter. Here comes Reflector Mage. It is going to return Emrakul because he's going to die to it if he doesn't.
Right. Yeah, so his hand is forced there. And Oliver finds Kozilek's Return, which can devastate both players' boards. Would kill all the spiders on the front side. On the back side, if he's able to trigger it when he casts the Emrakul, it will take out everything other than Sylvan Advocate on Paul's side of the table.
So Oliver is going to attack with the Wretched Griff. Cannot replay Emrakul this turn because of the Reflector Mage.
Yeah, I think we'll see him start with Gather the Pack, maybe. If he finds an Elder Deep Fiend, the dynamic of the game changes quite a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff over there, but it's actually not a ton of creatures for Paul. So here's
Right.
Jace. Oliver does not seem to want to cast that Gather the Pack.
Oh, perhaps. Okay, so
Oh.
he's baiting the Spell Queller.
He did.
He did know about that Spell Queller from the Emrakul turn.
Right.
And, yeah, he used the Jace to bait it out, now resolving the probably more powerful Gather the Pack.
Wow. Great play there from Oliver Tomashko.
Mm-hmm.
Sees another Graph Widow and a Primal Druid.
Yep, so even more blockers for Paul to get through. And
Wow.
another Kozilek's Return in the graveyard, so sparks are going to fly when Emrakul gets cast. Paul would love to find a Summary Dismissal, maybe off the Nissa.
Does not find it there.
Oh, and actually, Paul doesn't play Summary Dismissal in his deck, in part, I think, because he only has one basic island.
Please go to the blue gathering point. Draft
Does he play
36.
anything that's like any of the cards that are the anti-tech for Emrakul? Does he have even a Day's Undoing or anything like that?
No Days Undoing. His best bet's probably going to be Ojutai's Command to try to counter at least the 13-13 part of the Emrakul. He won't be able to stop the Mind Slaver or the Kozilek's Return element of it.
Wow.
The red gathering point banner.
Passes the turn back to Oliver. He is now Emrakul capable. The
Yep.
Reflector Mage ban has worn off. And still only 5 card types in Oliver's graveyard. You can tell he's been keeping track with that little side graveyard.
Yep. And even though we know that Paul doesn't have Summary Dismissal, I think we're going to see Oliver be very thoughtful about that card. If he knew that the coast was clear, he might do something like cast Kozilek's Return, then cast Emrakul, completely wipe the board. But instead, he doesn't want to lose his spiders if something's going to go wrong with that plan. So he's just going to start with Emrakul.
So plays Emrakul.
Number 13, Benjamin Wiley to the blue gathering point. From Modern Almanac, that's 13.
And an Elder Deep Fiend from Paul Rietzel.
Wow. Oh, so that was why Paul was counting Oliver's lands last turn. He was trying to see if he could keep him from casting Emrakul by tapping 4 lands in the upkeep. He decided that this play was better, just to tap some blockers and make it so that Oliver can't devastate his board.
And Oliver, he can't run into all those giant creatures. That's a great play for Paul Rietzel.
Suddenly this has become a very close game. The Nissa only on 6 loyalty, so not threatening to ultimate just yet. And Oliver's even going to tick it down. He can Legend Rule the Ashaya, so that's no worry. But that's at least one time bomb diffused on Oliver's part.
He's adding it up. He's like, can he do 18 here?
This is scary because this is the point where Oliver wanted to attack Paul's 4 or 5 best creatures into Oliver's 4 or 5 best creatures, but now he only has 4 power available there with those spiders. And the fact that Oliver chose not to flashback or cast Kozilek's Return last turn means that Paul still has this giant board.
Wow.
And let's not forget about Gideon Emblem. All right, I love this play from Oliver, making the best out of the situation by at least killing off Spell Queller, getting back his Jace, which is going to serve as 1 additional blocker.
Your first round pairings are posted. Our apologies for the confusion.
Activating Duskwatch Recruiter, both players get to see.
Find nothing.
And with so much mana available to Paul, Oliver can sort of stack his deck to a certain extent here. At least stack the bottom 12 cards. It looks like he's using it more for the information aspect than the deck stacking
Sure.
aspect. He must figure the game's going to be over one way or another in a few turns. And, I'm not going to waste a lot of time by rearranging the bottom cards.
Are there are no pain lands in play for Paul Rietzel?
No, Paul's done a nice job preserving his life total by not drawing Yavimaya Coast.
It would have been possible for him to kill him, had he drawn 4 coasts. Now Paul Rietzel gets to take a turn.
Please report to the blue gathering point. Standard 8.
And this is going to be the big turn of this game.
I think he just drew another Elder Deep Fiend.
Wow, if that's the case, he has a great chance to win this game. Tap down 4 blockers. Oh, it's an Archangel Avacyn.
Oh, that he drew? Okay.
Still a big draw. Nissa ticks up to see 1 card deeper. So Paul's sitting here with 6 creatures plus a Lumbering Falls in the back row. It means 2 creatures can get through. Not enough to kill Oliver this turn with what's on the board. So that means he's going to have to find a way to block and not die to Oliver's flying creatures.
All right, so everything's getting in the way of something here. It looks like Oliver is taking 6 from the 2 unblocked creatures. He's going to go to 12.
Yep.
But I don't see how Paul's going to be able to survive.
Well, what Paul does have is Duskwatch Recruiter. So if he can somehow put, let's see, he needs 13 points of flying toughness. He has 5 in hand already with Archangel Avacyn. If he can find some more Spell Quellers, maybe he can survive this attack. And I say 13 because there's a Wretched Griff also threatening
Right.
to attack.
So there's Tireless Tracker. Gets a clue.
Or maybe he just needs to find an Elder Deep Fiend,
Oh, sure.
of which he only has 1, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
So we might just see Emrakul crash in for a win here.
And Paul is going to make... Again, we have the deck list. Oliver doesn't. So he's going to make Paul's going to make him commit.
Yeah, I wonder why Paul didn't dig a little deeper to look for Reflector Mage with the Duskwatch Recruiter.
Oh, interesting. He did check his graveyard. It's possible that he's...
Yeah, it's possible,
Cleared them all. We didn't see the early
especially
game.
they might have gone to the bottom with Oliver's activations of Duskwatch Recruiter.
So here comes Emrakul. Sack clue. Is it Collected Company? Activates Duskwatch Recruiter. Looking for an answer. Yeah,
Okay,
and
Paul
Oliver didn't
concedes.
attack with the Wretched Griff, too. So, I mean, there was some possibility there that he might have been able to sneak it out. But Oliver Tomachko evens up the match at 1 game apiece. It's a little under 10 minutes left in the round. You see Alex Sittner and Jin Sui still playing on the last table.
Yeah, those guys are near the top of the standings in this tournament. They're both looking for an extra win to help their top 8 chances.
But right now, it is just young Oliver Tomachko and Pro Tour Hall of Famer Paul Rietzel, the Yankee fan versus the Red Sox fan, going into Game 3 under the cameras. Have you had a chance to play against Oliver at all?
Yeah, in fact, Oliver showed up to my local store for the last pre-release. So
Yeah, he's from your neck of the woods. He's from Westchester, so
he's-
that's like around where you're at, right?
Yeah, just outside of New York City. Yeah, Oliver's a really talented player. Came from Yu-Gi-Oh, I think.
Yeah, traveled with his family to a lot of these Grand Prix and really has made it his mission to succeed at the highest levels of the game and just, is committed to it by, first attacking the SCG Open circuits and the Grand Prix as he sort of makes his climb. And it's been on the Pro Tour already.
Yep, and it'll be no surprise if he breaks through to a first Grand Prix top 8 here.
Paul Rietzel said, he can't afford to wait. Normally you would not see Paul Rietzel the week after a Pro Tour playing in a Grand Prix, but he's like, can't waste the West Coast GP.
Yeah.
He's like, it's hard for me to get away and travel to an East Coast GP or a European GP, but West Coast, I have to take advantage of those when I can.
Yep. Yeah, Paul has an extremely demanding schedule, but Magic's important to him, and he just chooses his battles. Unlike a lot of Magic players I know who sort of fly by the seat of their pants, Paul is the guy who's planning out his exact tournament schedule 3-4 months in advance.
Were you referring to the inevitable Chris Calcano? Can't believe I'm not playing Magic this weekend.
Yeah.
Followed by the Thursday post. Just bought a flight to, Portugal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paul looks at he'll start mapping out his GPs for the year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 6 cards for Paul. He mulliganed his opening hand, and you know
Yeah,
what?
so he's taken about all of 6 seconds to mulligan these first 2 opening hands. He knows what he's looking for.
Well, I think in that case it was land.
Yeah,
It looked like
lands.
6 spells there. Meanwhile, Oliver's sitting there with 7.
So at this point, Oliver's thoughts turn not just from winning the match, but winning the match in time. I can see just over 5 minutes on the clock. These guys surely have a little bit of extra time due to being a feature match, but with the complexity of these matches,
And
they're
when
going to
we-
want to play quickly.
And when we say extra time, it's not like they get extra time to play their round. Because it takes them a little while to get set up, wait for us to get ready, and get them under the cameras, they start out of sync with the rest of the tournament, sometimes 3 to 5 minutes later than the rest of the tournament. And so they get the same exact amount of time, but they get some additional time after the clock has expired for the rest of the competitors.
Yes, exactly.
So there's a Sylvan Advocate. So, it's a pretty nice mull to 5 there.
Yeah, Paul looked like he had an excellent 5-card hand. I mean, in as much as 5-card hands can be excellent.
He's got to pass. No, he does have a spell, and he plays Tireless Tracker. Wow, this is great. This is when I asked you what does a great hand look like from Bant Company, you said 2-drop into 3-drop, and then possibly get a Collected Company on 4, and it's really hard for you to lose those games.
Yep, untapped lands. Now, interestingly enough, I think I saw a Kozilek's Return in Oliver's hand, which could have killed Tireless Tracker, but he doesn't want to kill his own Jace. Instead, he'll be using Fiery Impulse probably to take out one of those creatures instead.
Looks like he got a Spider there. He's going to activate Jace. Discards Kozilek's Return.
Yeah, so this is great for Oliver,
Yeah.
exactly where he wants to be. Transformed Planeswalker on turn 3, Fiery Impulse to take out one of these creatures, and an opponent who's heavily down on resources.
That looks like a Collected Company for Paul Rietzle. He does not have the 4th land, but he did draw a Collected Company. So this is a very winnable game for him.
It is, yeah.
But Tireless Tracker is going to get pretty tired here as Fiery Impulse takes him down with the flashback ability from Jace Telepath Unbound.
So I like the way Oliver's playing this. He's normally you'd be focusing more on your own game plan with a deck like this, but Oliver is capitalizing on the fact that Paul has mulliganed by just trying to trade 1-for-1 as often as possible. And in fact, that was even better than a 1-for-1 since he got to use the card from his graveyard through Jace Telepath Unbound.
So here's Ishkana, and he is delirious already.
Paul frustrated by drawing a tapped land there, unable to cast Collected Company. And he just bounces a Spider, doesn't want... He knows he can't win the game fast enough before Ishkanok would come back down, so he just wants to fight through fair and square.
Wow. Oliver Tomashka is just piling on here now. Now he's going to Nissa Vastwood Seer. Plays his 6th land.
But what he doesn't have yet is a giant Eldrazi. He doesn't have Emrakul. He doesn't have Kozilek's Return. There's
How
an
about
Elder Deep Fiend.
Yeah. Elder Deep Fiend and milled past another Kozilek's Return.
Players for the Charity Shield event, prepare for round 1 with
I love this play by Paul. Main phase collected company. He even drew another tap land, which he's going to want to play this turn, but might as well take a look, see if he finds a Tireless Tracker first. He finds Tireless Tracker, but Paul's collected companies have not been so good to him in these sideboarded games.
And now it is very easy for Oliver to just wipe out Paul's board here.
Yep. Wipe out the board, leaving himself with 2 Planeswalkers. The only complication is that Selfless Spirit.
John Carter to the red side of the stage. John Carter to the red side of the stage.
And kind of an interesting emerge play there. He sacrificed his token to just give him 1 less casting cost. It doesn't actually reduce the cost of casting the emerge cost, but it's 7 versus 8.
Yeah, effectively a Lotus Petal.
And does not bother with. Oh, he is. He's like, what are you doing with these triggers? And Paul sacrifices the Selfless Spirit, but now the Kozilek's Return still just remain in his graveyard. Oliver has the option not to resolve that trigger. Right?
Yep. So those will still be there in case Oliver finds a second copy of a big Planeswalker. And it looks like he's digging for one by flashing back Grapple with the Past.
And gets back an Elder Deep Fiend. So we're going to see on upkeep.
Yeah, he has to be careful. It would be an easy mistake, I think, to try to go for the Elder Deep Fiend now. But the problem is Paul's creatures are indestructible for the remainder of the turn, so he has to wait till next turn. Or no, I'm sorry. That was on Paul's turn that the Selfless Spirit was used. So yeah, it could be a consideration to use it on his own turn there just to ensure wiping the board, but he's going to get even more value by tapping Paul's lands in the upkeep.
He gets to basically obliterate everything here.
Yep.
But Paul has a collected company.
So he's looking for Selfless Spirit here.
And he found one.
Wow. So the game continues.
He did find a Selfless Spirit. Look at this. And a Duskwatch Recruiter. Or a Sylvan Advocate. That's, I think, what he's choosing between here. Decides to go for the card advantage of Duskwatch Recruiter. Sacrifices the Selfless Spirit. Draws for his turn. Wow. Still not in a great spot here, but...
No, he's behind on board, he's behind in life total, and if Oliver continues to find big creatures with all of his card selection, his Gather the Packs and his Grapple with the Pasts... Oh,
and there's a Deep Fiend.
I thought it might be a whiff, but nope, there's the Deep Fiend.
And then he gets to draw another card with Nissa Sage Animist.
Both players playing at a very brisk pace.
Well, time is up on the main floor, about 2 minutes past, so they probably have a minute left before turns are called.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Oliver certainly feeling a sense of urgency here and wanting to win in time, and Paul just in the interest of fair play wants, the match to reach its natural conclusion.
So here comes Elder Deep Fiend number 3. And that's going to be the game. Paul Rietzel extends the hand. He can't do anything. He knows his creatures are going to get wiped out by a Kozilek's Return. This time, he was able to fight it off for a couple turns there. But Oliver Tomajko here in round 13 finds himself at 12-1.
Yeah, congratulations to him.
He's only got 2 rounds to go. He's in great shape here to make his first Grand Prix top 8.
Yeah, only needs 1 win in the next 2 rounds, maybe a draw if things break right for him. And we haven't seen the last of Paul either. He's still got a shot to make a top 8 appearance.
Paul plays well while he's back against the wall.
Yeah, we know that.
So that's it here for round 13 at Grand Prix Portland.